Here's the ugly truth people don't want to say out loud. The games industry is not failing because it can't make great games. It's failing because it took the parts of game making that used to be incidental creativity, risk, craft, and replaced them with spreadsheets, seasonal calendars, and storefronts. I remember when a new big budget shooter felt like an event. You bought one box and you had a game campaign, maps, modes. Today, the headline is Game updated 27 times this season, or new premium bundle now live for $25. That shift from discrete products to perpetual services is the core of the problem. Starting around the 2000s, a few titles showed publishers a powerful idea: keep the player forever, not just for a weekend. Free to play and seasonal models, think Fortnite or Gacha, hits like Genshin Impact proved you could make ongoing revenue through cosmetics, battle passes, and repeat monetization. Publishers rushed into this model because it's profitable, steady revenue, predictable metrics, and recurring engagement. But a wall of consequences followed. Live service design prizes, retention above novelty. It favors content cadence. What can we ship this season over bold, risky design that might take years to land? And when that becomes the primary KPI, games get flattened into predictable, safe loops. Developers and even other publishers started copying the live service playbook, and the market filled up with dozens of similar experiences, competing for the same attention. Many of them tank fast. The model is noisy and unforgiving. Dev surveys and industry reporting show rising developer concerns about the sustainability of this model and rapidly falling player retention on new live projects. If you want an example of how design follows money, look at big mainstream franchises. Call of Duty used to sell maps, DLC, and boxed expansions. Now, it sells cosmetic ecosystems priced like seasonal subscriptions. That's not inherently evil. Cosmetic economies let players personalize characters. But the problem is when those economies start steering decisions, when an item's price, rarity, or availability influences how a match looks or how players are rewarded. We've seen community blowups over very expensive bundles and placement of paid items inside core menus, the sort of decisions that make players feel the game is selling to them at every step. Recent reporting and community backlash around premium bundles and in UI promotions show that even established franchises are pushing aggressive monetization experiments and players are angry. Then there's the psychological angle, randomized rewards, and fear of missing out mechanics. Loot boxes and gacha systems are designed around variable reward schedules, the exact same trick casinos use to keep people engaged. Regulators noticed some countries treated these systems as gambling and forced changes, while others left them alone, creating a patchwork of rules and industry responses. That regulatory history is the reason publishers sometimes call loot boxes controversial rather than optional extras. There's another side to the spreadsheet story, the human toll. Making a game is still craft work, but the business pressures are brutal. When a project becomes a live ops treadmill, teams are forced into endless cycles of content, hot fixes, and patches cycles that often translate into crunch over time and stress for developers. Surveys and industry studies show crunch is still normalized and layoffs in recent years have been sweeping. That instability eats talent and morale. We've also seen mass layoffs at big groups and a wave of studio closures after ambitious M&A strategies collapsed. When companies scale through acquisitions and then can't sustain all of those projects, cuts follow, and dozens of promising games, often the most experimental ones, get canned. The Embracer example and the aftershocks of big acquisitions show how fragile the system can be when finance, not craft, drives decisions. The result? Talent leaves, risk tolerance drops, and the industry's appetite for taking chances shrinks. People who care about innovative games are either burned out or folded into safer, iterative sequels, the very thing critics complain about. Walk through any AAA release calendar and you'll notice patterns. Open worlds carved the market in the 2000s. Battle passes dominated the 2000s, and now live ops are everywhere. Publishers chase the business cases that work, so risk averse strategies proliferate. That's why so many big releases end up feeling like variations of one another. Same mission types, same loot loops, same guardrails. Critics and players call this sameness. It's not nostalgia, it's economics. AI and tooling promise to speed content production, but they can also accelerate sameness if studios use them to mass produce assets without a strong creative vision. The danger is that the tools make it cheaper to clone familiar tropes rather than to fund risky, original ideas. Okay, concrete examples make this less abstract. Monetization creep in big franchises. As I said, major series now roll out $20 to $30 cosmetic bundles and paid battle passes the same week the game launches. Players sometimes need to spend hundreds to feel complete in a season. Recent reporting on premium bundles and in-menu ads shows how mainstream titles are testing player tolerance. Failed live service launches. Not every live service is sustainable. Big, well funded projects have folded or been cancelled quickly when they fail to stand out, which underlines that the model is risky at scale. Some high profile cancellations and rapid shutdowns were notable in 2024 to 2025. Loot box backlash and regulation countries like Belgium classified certain loot systems as gambling, forcing changes and creating a legal headache for publishers who had normalized randomized monetization. The regulatory back and forth has been a major public relations and business issue for the industry. Okay, this isn't all doom and gloom. There are models that show how to do live service well. Some games focus on meaningful content and expansions rather than shallow seasonal cosmetics. A recent standout example is Helldivers 2, which players and critics praised because its updates add new systems, maps, and gameplay, not just skins. That's the key difference. Live service that enriches mechanics and play loops can be sustainable and fun. Indie studios are also doing great work because they aren't beholden to massive quarterly earnings reports. Small teams can take design risks that AAA publishers won't. That's why many of the most exciting games in the last few years came from smaller teams or from publishers willing to back smaller, original IPs. If you boil this down to a few core causes, it's basically this. 1. Monetization first decisions. When earnings per user becomes the priority, design follows. 2. Scale and consolidation. Giant publishers accumulate IP and studios, then push for predictability. When the finances wobble, layoffs and cancellations follow. 3. Short-term investor pressure. Big companies answer to shareholders who want predictable growth, not creative risk. And 4. Talent stress and churn crunch and layoffs erode the creative teams that make bold games. Each factor amplifies the others. Here's the optimistic part: none of this is irreversible. Better product first, monetization. Ship gameplay first, make monetization optional, and design cosmetics that don't distort play. Regulate randomized systems clearly so companies can't use opacity as leverage. Protect development teams, enforce reasonable work cycles, reward long term craft over short term churn, and support unionization where it helps workers get stable terms. These are practical steps that reduce brain drain. Fund risk and small teams. Publishers and investors should fund multiple smaller projects instead of banking everything on one blockbuster. That diversity encourages innovation. Transparent regulation, clear, consistent rules for monetization, and a practical approach to loot boxes slash gotcha help level the playing field and protect vulnerable players while letting honest models flourish. This isn't just an industry problem, it's a consumer ecosystem. Vote with your wallet. Avoid games that make you feel pressured into spending. Support creators and studios that ship meaningful updates rather than endless cosmetics. Buy the indie titles that try something new. Call out shady practices and reward studios that do right by their players. Consumer behavior matters. If enough of us demand different experiences, developers and publishers will notice. To wrap up, the gaming industry didn't become a nightmare overnight. It chose certain trade offs: steady revenue, massive scale, and defensible IP that were sensible from a business point of view. But those same choices flattened risk and starved novelty. If we want better games, we need better incentives for creators, for players, and for regulators. Otherwise, we'll keep getting prettier versions of the same game and call that progress.